Thank you all for joining in. We'll just wait for a few more minutes for other participants to also join. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining in today. Today is the 8th day of the ALP Forum. And over the past few weeks, we have discussed about the low emission development strategies for different countries and looked at different thematic groups, looking at energy and clean mobility and looking at subnational integration for better mechanisms. And to tie this all up together, today we will talk about the enhanced transparency framework and the different modalities and the different tools that countries will be able to use to enable them to have a proper monitoring and a reporting structure. As you know, with the NDCs, most of the NDCs have been submitted. Some countries have submitted their second NDCs, and there have also been countries having submitted their long-term strategies as well. And so going forth, as we look at a tenure of looking at 2040 and 50, countries will now have to start looking at how they are going to be reporting, what are their GHG inventories, and what we now have to look at the capacity of these countries to be able to come up with these robust monitoring systems. So today's session is going to be on the enhanced transparency framework, and we're looking at the guidance for implementation. And we have a very esteemed panel here with us today. And most of them, in fact, have joined in very early. So I would really like to thank all our panelists for showing their enthusiasm to join us at this time. Without any further ado, I would just like to go over some of the housekeeping rules. Next slide, please. Yes. So I would request all panel participants to please keep your phones and other online messaging apps on silent mode, as it does cause a little bit of disturbance during the session. The session will overall be conducted in English. However, we do have interpretation facilities in Bahasa Indonesia. We have a question and answer box. I would request the participants to please put in their questions in this box We will take these questions up at different points during the session. So I would encourage you to be actively participate in this. If you do have a question that you directly want to ask the speaker, you may raise your hands, and we will. My colleagues will unmute you, and you can directly ask the question. Just to point out, also when you write the question, please specify to whom it is addressed. Speakers will obviously, we will try and keep our videos on. However, there might be chances if the bandwidth is low, we might have to turn off our videos. The session will also be conducted over the Whova platform. So those who are joining in from the Whova platform, you can also direct your questions into the Q&A box on your windows, and we will be able to see it on the Zoom app. I would now just like to introduce our moderator for the session today. We are glad and blessed to have Mr. Jigme here with us today. He is the manager of MRV and ETF support subdivision at the Transparency Division at the UNFCCC. He provides technical assistance and advice to developing country parties on the existing measurement, reporting, and verification arrangements under the convention and on the transparency framework under the Paris Agreement. He also manages the technical support to be given to countries to prepare and submit their nationally determined contributions. Prior to joining the Secretariat, he worked at the Royal Government of Bhutan as a technical focal point for climate change and air quality. We are glad to have him here to introduce our panelists. And thank you, everybody. And over to you, Mr. Jigme.
Thank you, Pratibha. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Good. Well, colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is my pleasure to moderate this session. As Pratibha mentioned, we will have a number of speakers at this session who come with very vast, rich experience and knowledge. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. In the interest of time, I will leave the introduction of the panelists at a point when I will give them the floor for their intervention. But first, a very warm welcome to all of you who are connected to this session virtually. I trust everyone is staying safe and healthy. Transparency, as we all know, it's one of the core commitments embedded in the convention, and as well as transparency, as well as Paris Agreement. And it is viewed as a key mechanism for trust building and promoting confidence amongst parties, as well as a tool to promote effective implementation of climate action. The Paris Agreement itself was designed to be a big tent that can accommodate all countries with diverse national circumstances and capacity. And this is clearly reflected in the NDCs that we see now, the diversity in terms of, the target type, in terms of coverage of the NDCs, and also underlying policies and measures. And the success in such a bottom-up regime, the success, the confidence in the implementation of actions and achievements of goals, including delivery of support, will depend on the success of transparency mechanism. The enhanced transparency framework was established primarily to ensure that countries will be delivering on the commitments that they put forward in their NDCs. At the same time, it offers a very useful platform for peer exchange among parties, primarily to share with each other lessons learned, experiences, and even inject collaboration on number of areas. Under the enhanced transparency framework, for the first time, all countries will be operating under a same set of rules. Of course, there is flexibility to those developing countries that need it in the light of their capacity. But even with flexibilities, it is very clear that number of developing countries, and in fact, I would say most developing countries will need support because they are facing number of challenges, even under the current MRV arrangement, which is viewed as less rigorous than what is going to come under the Paris Agreement. And when we talk of challenges, there are a few common themes that come up consistently across most parties, and this relate to having still weaker institutional arrangements in place. And then there are whole issues around data and information. Either data is not available or data is available, but it is either not accessible or not in the right format that can be used right away, or there are gaps in the data that is available. And then thirdly, there is whole challenge issue around limited technical capacity to select and apply appropriate methodologies and tools. Fourthly, we also hear quite commonly about limited domestic buy-in, which quite often translates into weaker policy guidance or policy motivation. And then there still seems to be limited awareness amongst national stakeholder on UNFCCC process. And this is something one could even say a disconnect between what is happening in the negotiation process and outcome with practitioners on the ground. For example, we conducted a survey this year, and of 32 countries that responded, 16% indicate that they have very limited knowledge about the modalities, procedures, and guidelines for enhanced transparency framework that was adopted in Katowice in 2018. Another 59% of respondents say that they are familiar with the MPGs, but not enough for them to be able to start getting into planning for the implementation of enhanced transparency framework. And 25% say that they probably are knowledgeable enough to start the work. So when you look at this, 75% is still not confident enough, and that is quite telling. Of course, we cannot read too much into these numbers, but that still gives a flavor of potential challenges that developing countries are likely to face in coming years. So to that end, I sincerely think that events such as this one are not only timely, but much needed one. Firstly, to sensitize countries on what is coming their way, what needs to happen now or soon, and what kind of tools, opportunities exist or reside with international partners. And we will have a chance to get flavor of the kind of support that resides from our panel members today. The first reporting under Paris Agreement in the form of biennial transparency reports will happen at the latest by 31st December. And when you look at this timeline, we are not talking of a lot of time at our disposal now. Probably at the most, we are looking at 3 and a half years that we have for you to prepare and submit your first biennial transparency reports. And if you look at the precedents that we have for national communication and biennial update reports, 3.5 years might prove to be a very tight one. So it is really about time that countries earnestly start initiating the work to prepare your BTRs now. Fortunately, most of the countries have some form of work that is ongoing right now, either in the form of national communication or a biennial update report, which can serve as a basis to build on. Of course, with that, it will necessitate taking stock of where you are now and figure out what needs to be improved and enhanced, and then draw up a plan which puts you to a pathway that will be able to at some point of time in future able to prepare a very high quality biennial transparency reports. So I've heard some say that it is not possible to start any work on the BTR preparation, given that there are still ongoing negotiations on reporting tables, formats, and outline. Yes, the outcomes of the negotiation no doubt will have bearing on the work, but I do not believe, I still believe that there are sufficient guidance in the modalities, procedures, and guidelines adopted in Katowice in 2018 to allow sufficient enough to initiate the work, the preparatory groundwork that can form as a basis for foundation, that can serve as a foundation for your preparation of your BTR in coming year or so. So with that, I suggest that we now start hearing from our distinguished panel members. First, we will hear an update from the Secretariat on ETF Enhanced Transparency Framework, and we can expect to hear some update on where things are in terms of negotiations. What does it mean when we say enhanced transparency framework, and how does that compare with what we have under convention? So that presentation will be from Bernd Heckman, my colleague Bernd Heckman. He is program officer in the transparency division, and he is responsible for providing technical support and advice to developing countries on existing MRV arrangements, enhanced transparency framework, and also on preparation and communication of nationally determined contributions. So with that brief introduction, let me now pass the floor or screen to Bernd. Bernd, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Jigme. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Next slide, please. And the next one. Thank you. First of all, I would really like to say thank you very much to our hosts today, the Asia-Let's partnership, because we in the Secretariat are very often very far away from what is happening on the ground. We are, of course, traveling a lot, not these days certainly, but normally traveling to many places, working on sharing the information that has been adopted. But as Jigme said in his opening remarks, there seems to be very often a disconnect between what is on one hand negotiated and also agreed upon, and which knowledge and which understanding is available amongst everyone who is actually in the end implementing all these decisions. And for exactly that, for building up this knowledge base, for getting into an exchange, for discussing and debating what is actually meant by all these decisions and agreements, a platform like this is certainly very, very important because it allows for exchange. It allows also, and I think that is very important, to put all this information and all these decisions into a much more practical context, into a context that kind of connects those that negotiate with those that have. And I think, given the statistics that you just presented, exactly this kind of offers, exactly these kind of platforms are currently needed to, on one hand, build up the understanding, build up the knowledge of what is out there, what needs to be done, but also on the other hand, to exchange amongst countries, to exchange amongst peers as to how to do that and how things work in one context or in another. So therefore, with this introductory presentation, I really just want to show a bit what the Enhanced Transparency Framework is all about, but also kind of try to bring it more into the context of implementation and discuss with you how to best prepare for this. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today, and also to the other panelists that will join me and will provide much more practical tools as to how to implement the agreement and how to implement the MPGs. Jigme mentioned that in 2018, the COP in Katowice adopted actually a huge package of what is called the MPGs. And MPGs, these are the modalities, procedures, and guidelines for implementing the Enhanced Transparency Framework under the Paris Agreement. That is a very, very substantive set of guidelines with almost around 100 pages of information as to what needs to be done by countries. How should this be done? It includes a schedule on which this whole transition is now happening. It includes principles that should guide the work. It includes elements and bits and pieces, how this whole Enhanced Transparency Framework should look like. And those elements I'm looking forward to introduce today. Next slide, please. Starting with the principles, and that is, I think, something very important that Jigme mentioned. Even though we have this huge number of pages, paragraphs, but also provisions in the ETF and in the MPGs, in the guidelines, it is actually building and enhancing the convention. So that means it doesn't start from scratch, but it starts from where we are. And there also Jigme mentioned something very interesting, that most countries have already, in one way or another, participated in the MRV arrangements under the convention, and have either prepared national communications or biannual update reports so far. And the MPG builds on this and enhances it. The next one is, the next key principle is really to facilitate improved reporting over time. And that is, again, something that builds exactly on what Jigme said, that the Enhanced Transparency Framework is not a one-size-fits-all. It is one umbrella, one tent that should accommodate all different circumstances, countries with different national priorities, but also different capacities. And I think that is, when getting into this discussion, very, very important to keep in mind that each one has to start exactly where they are right now. And then slowly over time, build up the capacities, build up the implementation of the transparency framework in a way that suits the national priorities and development and also capacities. It should promote TACCC principles, It's mainly about comparability. It's about completeness of information. These are principles for the accounting on one hand, but also for guiding the whole transparency framework. In the end, it's to achieve its objectives and also to build the necessary trust. The information and data presented have to be ultimately with a certain quality. And I think that should always be guiding the discussions and also guiding the direction. It should avoid a duplication of work and undue burden on countries. That is exactly this idea of facilitated improvement over time. But it should also make sure that, and countries and governments should make sure that once a certain standard is reached, they're not sliding back behind that, but building up on that. Slide, please. And Jigme already mentioned there is also a certain flexibility built into the enhanced transparency framework. That is also one of the ideas that I mentioned with everyone is starting where they currently are. There are elements and provisions in this transparency framework, in these MPGs, that allows parties to use a certain degree of flexibility. And that is really determined by each party's own capacities. And on that basis, the party can avail and use this flexibility and then eventually move on from it. So when you look at this graph, it's kind of a way to show that everyone starts where they are. And over time, every country is moving in one direction towards one step. But this time, as you can see with this X indicated here, is not defined. So it really depends on the progress in each country. Next slide, please. And this is what the enhanced transparency framework already has and how it looks like. It is actually a process, a broader umbrella. It provides clarity on what needs to be reported, what needs to be contained in these reports. And it provides a very good understanding of how this whole process looks. So Jigme mentioned some bits and pieces are not yet agreed. However, most of what is required is agreed. And I think it is very important for everyone to have a look at this and see where we are right now. And then look also at what is available in your country and see, can we already provide this kind of information, for example? And Khatira mentioned it in the beginning. GHG inventory is something that is mandatory for every country. That means an inventory needs to be provided. Countries need to start tracking the progress on how they are faring in implementing their own NDCs, their own climate targets. There is clarity that developed countries need to provide information on the support that they provide to developing countries, and developing countries should provide information on the support that is needed. And on adaptation, also here it is very important that countries start reporting about it, talking about it. It's not mandatory, however, it is an element that applies to all. And all of this together will form the biannual transparency report. That is the major vehicle through which the reporting will. All this information will be reviewed. And that is also new. Every country will undergo a review of these reports, of this information. And that can either be an in-country review, that means a team of experts come to your country, or will be done centralized one, depending on the modalities every given year. After that, and that is also new, countries are entering in what we refer to as the FMCP, the facilitative process during which governments in one of the UNFCCC sessions, normally at the COP or at the SB sessions, will talk to each other. So it is basically each country will present on its reporting and findings. You and other countries can ask questions. And that is actually a new element for everyone. So it's not only that the information that you provide will be reviewed, but you also have to have an opportunity to discuss these with other countries. And that, all in all, will be is encompassed in the enhanced transparency framework, and is this new process that every country will undergo every 2 years. So next slide, please. However, Jigme also mentioned that there are many elements that are kind of clear in how they may look like. However, the very details as to how the reporting should look like is not yet clear, as this is still under negotiations. And I'm just listing those elements that are still under negotiations. However, it is also clear that we already know what this information will be. We know what the process, we know what kind of information needs to be reported in which way. Often the only thing we don't know yet is how exactly should the report be built? How exactly should the reporting be done? Nevertheless, that is, I would say, the last element that is required. All the rest before that, all the rest that comes before putting the information down on paper into a report is already known. And therefore, I think it is very true what you said, that governments should start looking into, are we ready for this? Keep being very mindful that the final way of reporting is not yet decided. The general understanding of what needs to be reported and how this should be done is already clear. Next slide, please. And this is the timeline. And here, again, most of what I want to say today has been raised by Jigme. As you can see, critical is the year 2024. And that is when the first biannual transparency reports need to be reported under the Paris Agreement. And that is not far away, especially when you think of the last year, which kind of passed very, very quickly. Now it is 2021, so that's 3.5 years until 2024. That is not much for what is actually required. And that is not only the preparation of the report, but it's mainly, and I think that is very important, everything that comes before the preparation of the report. That is the institutional arrangements. That's about also how and where do we get the data from. It's about finding the right data and also verifying this data, and then ensuring that all this data comes together in one in one place, so that report or this reporting. So I think it's important to keep this timeline in mind, and also keep in mind that 2024 is indeed around the corner. Next slide, please. However, the good thing is that, and that is the whole idea of the Paris Agreement, and then also the idea of the Enhanced Transparency Framework. The good thing is we are not starting from scratch. We're actually starting on a very solid basis for many countries, and that is starting off from the MRV arrangements under the convention. And what we have here on the right-hand side, these are the three elements of the Enhanced Transparency Framework: the report, review, and the consideration process. And you see on the left-hand side, we already put, or I try to put together those elements that are currently already under implementation, and what are guiding many countries already in participating under the MRV arrangement. So many countries, as we said already, are preparing national communications, BORs, some are doing GG inventories already. All this will be kind of continued and then reported in form of the biannual transparency. The technical expert review is something that many developing countries are already experiencing in a slightly different form. However, it is already existing and many countries are already going through it. It's the technical analysis of the BORs and or the technical assessment of REDD+ and forest reference. This has already been done and many countries are participating in this. And this will give you an excellent basis to also prepare for what is there to come under the Paris Agreement. And the same applies for the facilitative multilateral consideration of progress. That is the element under the Paris Agreement. We do have a very similar element under the current MRV arrangements of the Convention, and that is called the facilitative sharing views. So it is really something that many of you are already in one way or another familiar with, and that will be used as the basis for what is there to come under the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. And what I try to put together here are the key elements of, on one hand, the biannual transparency reports on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, the key elements of the national communications and also the biannual update reports. So I try to color code this, and of course it's not often directly matching, but you see that the inventory and the tracking of progress, adaptation, information on support, these elements of the biannual transparency reports are already in one way or another elements of the reports under the convention. So you see inventory is something that is in all of these reports. The same for mitigation actions, finance technology. So the main essence of this slide is really to show to everyone, we're not starting from scratch. We are actually building on what we have. We are consolidating different reports, different information, and structuring it maybe slightly differently. However, it is really something that many of you are familiar with. And I hope the slides will be available later on to all participants so that you can just have a look and use it to prepare and also to share it with colleagues to build up the understanding of what is it we actually already have and what might be new we need to use it and build up our capacities. Next slide, please. And this slide really just should show this general idea of improved reporting over time. And I think it's very important to always keep that in mind, not to look to others too much, but look at your own capacities and use them as a starting point. And then you take it from there, and then over time, you build it up. Next slide, please. And here, that is one of the statistics I just wanted to show. It is actually showing that more than 1/3 of all developing countries are already reporting on their BORs under the convention. Even more so are preparing national communications under the convention. And I think that is a very good starting point to just look at this and see many of you are already doing a lot. Use that as the basis for what is there to come. And don't be afraid of these many pages of MPGs, because most of them is already captured in all the different decisions that have been taken before, and it's now just consolidated in one big document. Next slide, please. And as we will hear from many of the participants coming now, also the Secretariat is providing support on one hand through its expert group, the CGE, and on the other hand, we are also, as Jigme mentioned, having our own support program. And this support is very much about knowledge delivery, knowledge products, but we are also offering in-country support. And I'm seeing signals coming from Jigme. I should wrap up. I just leave this slide also in the slide deck so that everyone knows it and is aware of it. And once you want to work with us, we are very happy to do so. Last slide, please. And here I have a couple of key messages. I think the most important one is the last one, is in red, that the best preparation for the future is taking action today. And that is, on one hand, looking into building up the institutional arrangements, working on the data and data quality, but on the other hand, also participating in the processes that are currently ongoing in the MRV arrangements under the convention. Preparing your BORs is the best step to get prepared for the DTRs under the ETL. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the panel. And as I said, talk to us and contact us in case you have questions, in case you want to discuss capacity or support. We're happy to do that anytime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernd. Well, thanks for laying out the landscape of enhanced transparency framework. For me, the key takeaway message from here is that ETF is not completely something new, but an extension of existing MRV arrangements. And the best way of learning is to start doing it. And the other thing is that the deadlines are looming, so we need to start preparing for it as early as possible. So thank you very much. Now let's move to the next presentation, which is on, and next presentation will be on capacity assessment report, common challenges in the region. And that presentation will be from Ms. Fatima Zahra Taibi. She is a senior advisor at the UNEP DTU partnership. She coordinates parts of the global support program for NCs and BURs, and also works on an array of transparency NDC and NDC support projects. So with that brief introduction, can I invite Ms. Fatima Zahra Taibi? Fatima, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jigme, for the introduction. And thank you to the Asia-Leds Forum for this kind invitation and for allowing me to, for giving me the opportunity to participate. I would like to share my screen. Could I please have the right? Yes. Good. Is my screen visible?
Yes. Yes, we can see the screen and we can hear you clearly.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much again. Thank you, Jigme. So good morning and good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to this session. I think it's this session on transparency and on NDCs are timely, as both Jigme and Bernd have mentioned. The needs basically for more information and for more trainings on transparency are very apparent, especially also in the region. So we do appreciate the organization of this event and the possibility to participate. So today I will be presenting the results of the capacity assessment that we have done in the region under the Global Support Program. So just before starting, a little bit of background on the GSP so that we can put things into context. So the Global Support Program is basically a program that is jointly implemented by UNEP and the UNDP. And the main objective of this support program is to support developing countries with their national communications and BURs. So the idea is that this program is in addition to what is offered already within the CBIT, so that the support that is the ad hoc support provided helps in speeding up the submissions of the national communications and the BURs. So the main approach for the network, for the program, was the creation of regional networks. So it has resulted in the creation of 13 regional networks, out of which 2 are in the Asian regions. So the South Asian network and Southeast Asian network. So here I have put in the slides the member countries of the networks. So within this project, we have undertaken an analysis of capacity and gaps in the region for compliance with the provisions of the enhanced transparency framework. So, and to do that, our approach was basically to analyze all the submitted national communications and BURs from the countries in the region. So, we have analyzed that against the NDC, the UNFCCC provisions. We have also done a need assessment survey that we have asked countries to reply to. We have also undertaken interviews, and also we have used the results that we had from the various interactions that we had with countries in various workshops and trainings. So the main findings, we have actually, based on that, prepared 2 very big reports. They are each over 100 pages. So here I will just try to present the main findings, and then you can have the possibility basically to look into details in the various reports for which I will provide the link later. So just before then, I would like to have a look to give you kind of an overview of the status of submissions of the NCs and BURs in the region. So we start with the Southeast Asian region, and here we can see that most countries have submitted at least 1 national communication. Most of them are in their 2nd, 3rd, and even 4th for Singapore. So we can see that most countries had a little bit more trainings, if we can say that, in the preparation and submission of the national communication. The landscape is a bit different for the BUR, where we see that many countries have either, like, we have 3 countries out of the 9, I think, in the region that have not submitted any BUR, and we have some countries that are in their first BUR, but we have, of course, again, some bit more advanced countries like Singapore and Thailand who are already in their 3rd BUR. Then the landscape for South Asia look as you can see in the slide. So here we can see that most countries are actually in their 2nd national communication, with the exception of Bangladesh that had submitted a 3rd national communication already. And for the BUR, it's much less advanced, I would say. So here we have only 3 countries who have submitted their first BUR, 2 countries with their first BUR, which are Afghanistan and the Maldives, and India has submitted 2 BURs. So if we can see already the difference between the two networks, the South Asia and Southeast Asia, where we see that Southeast Asia is a little bit more advanced in terms of submissions of these reports in comparison with the South Asia. So just to again emphasize the fact of what Jigme and Bernd had mentioned. So these submissions are the status as we can see it are the results of many years of participation in the MRV under the convention. And then we can see with the BUR, for instance, in the South Asian region, where the rate of submission is very low. So that kind of gives us a little bit of I would say, worry with regard to how much frequency of reporting of 2 years would be feasible for most countries. Of course, we have many countries in the region that are LDCs and SIDS and that have the flexibility to submit at their own discretion. But if we want a universal participation in the ETF, then we need to look at how we might be able to support countries and also countries themselves, what are the elements that they can put in place so that they can have a sustainable reporting with the frequency that is called for in the ETF. So here in this slide, we look also at the, sorry, I'm just trying to, yeah. So we look at how at the use of the IPCC guidelines. As you know, one of the new requirements of the ETF that is different from the previous MRV arrangements is the use of the IPCC, that it requires the use of the IPCC 2006 guidelines. So here we have looked at what are the guidelines that have been used in various countries in the region. So first we start with the South Asia. So here we can see that in national communications, for the inventory, of course, only 2 countries, which are Bangladesh and the Maldives, have used the IPCC 2006 guidelines. All the other countries have used the older versions. And then for the submitted BOR, we see that 3 countries have used the IPCC 2006 guidelines, which are Afghanistan, India, and the Maldives. So this just shows that there is quite a big need for capacity building for the IPCC, for the use of the IPCC guidelines 2006 in the region, so that countries can be in compliance with the new requirements of the MPGs. Now, sorry, yeah. Now we look at the status in Southeast Asia. So here we can see that more countries have actually used the IPCC 2006 guidelines. So 4 countries, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Myanmar, used the 2006 guidelines, and 2 countries who are Singapore and Vietnam, used the 2006 the IPCC 2006 guidelines for selected sectors. So this is for the national communications. For the BOR, we have 6 countries again who have used the 2006 IPCC guidelines, which are Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam. So again, here the same comments with regard to the need for capacity development for the use of the IPCC guidelines. And this is something that we have observed overall, where most countries have actually requested such trainings on the IPCC guidelines, especially also for the use of the software. So then here I will be just presenting in a nutshell some of the main common gaps that we have observed in the content of the NCs and BORs. So here, just to mention that we have taken NCs and BORs as the basis for the analysis, because that's basically the reports that have been submitted until now. And given that they are basically this reporting under the convention is the basis that is to be used the new enhanced transparency framework. Of course, there are many elements that will be added and more stringent provisions that are there, but this is the basis that we can start with. So by extrapolation, our idea is that the gaps that we find here, if they are corrected, they can be a very good basis for compliance or for preparation for the enhanced transparency framework. So when we look at the common gaps, for instance, for institutional arrangements, what we have found is that this is, just to emphasize, this is in the content of the NCs and BORs that have been already submitted. So what we have observed is that there is a common thread is the availability of clear TORs for various committees, task groups, and or experts, thematic working groups involved in the preparation of the NC and the BOR. So this was a common area where most countries have not reported on that. And then we have also lack of details on the overall institutional arrangements for the implementation, monitoring of adaptation and mitigation priorities. With regard to GHG inventories, what we have observed as well is the unavailability of procedures for managing uncertainties in inventory data and the GHG emission calculations. And also we have observed that most countries have some exclusions, especially in regard with the solvents and other products. So they have excluded these sectors from the inventory. And also what we have observed is that most countries have used the tier 1 approach for most of the emission source analysis. This is of course allowed, however, it does not give you a very I mean, like the big picture or like a more detailed picture on the emissions, because it uses mostly a lot of default values. So and the idea is to be more as fine as possible. So here, as I mentioned, it's the tier 1 approach that is mainly used by most countries for most emission sources. Then for adaptation and mitigation, we have observed that adaptation measures are not evaluated in terms of cost, practicability, environmental and cultural appropriateness. And also we have observed that costs associated with GHG reductions in mitigation projects are unavailable. We have, with regard to other information considered relevant to the achievement of the convention, we have observed that the details on the steps taken to integrate climate change considerations into national development and policy formulations are not available. Also, an availability of information on climate change research and systematic observation, and availability of information on climate change education, training, and public awareness, and on measures to promote information exchange and networking, and also on constraints and gaps and related financial, technical, and capacity needs, including description of support needed and received, and also information on opportunities to implement adaptation measures. Of course, there are some countries that have covered these elements, but here we are just looking at what the majority have as gaps, and you can see details by countries in the reports that I will provide the link to later. So this is, as I mentioned, was based on the content of the NCs and BORs, but also we have looked at the international, the results or the outcomes of the international consultation and analysis for those countries that have gone through that process. Then here in this slide, I will be saying a bit about the main common challenges for capacity in the region, not only based on the content of the NCs and BORs, but also taking into account, as I mentioned before, the results of the surveys and the various interactions in workshops. So the main gap or the main need that we have observed is a better understanding of the new reporting requirements under the ETF, including for tracking of NDCs. I think this is something that Jigme has mentioned in the beginning, where he said that in the survey, the global survey that they have undertaken, there was 75% of people who were not confident enough in using the MPGs. I think that's confirmed in specifically in the Asian region, where we have observed that, and despite so many trainings that have been done, we still could see that there is still a lot of needs with regard to that. So this is an area that we all as support organizations would need to put quite a bit of emphasis on. With regard to the institutional aspects, so I have tried to divide the challenges into categories. So for the institutional part, there is an absence. One of the common challenges is the absence of sustainable institutional arrangements where roles, responsibilities, and the frequency of reporting for all involved in transparency are clearly defined and institutionalized. So we observe that the treatment of the reporting of NCs and BORs, and of course, if the same situation persists, it would be also for the BTR, is treated as a one-off project where the infrastructure that is put in place is lost when the project ends. So there is usually a project that is developed or prepared with the support of maybe Jeff through one of the implementing agencies, and then a consultant that is who is recruited, and then once the project is finalized and the report is submitted, then that infrastructure is gone, and countries find themselves in the same situation than before submitting the NCs and BORs. Yes.
Could you please try to wrap up in another minute? We are actually quite a bit behind the schedule.
Okay, I will try. Thank you. So just to emphasize here that institutional arrangements are really very important going forward, because that's what would be the backbone basically for this enhanced transparency framework, where the reporting need to be treated in a sustainable and systematic way, not as a project based. So when we go to human resources, we observe that most of countries do not have dedicated teams for transparency or very small teams. And in these teams, we have a high turnover, which lead to loss of knowledge and capacity. And therefore, there is a big need for continuous capacity building so that the new people are constantly updated and know about the provisions of the ETF. One of the big challenges as well that we see is the unavailability of data, but also the lack of awareness from the data providers on how this data is used. We have heard from countries that if the data providers actually understand the bigger picture, then they would be kind of more willing to be involved in the system and in sharing the data. With regard to the technical aspect, some of the common challenges include the lack of capacity in modeling and mitigation assessments, the application of the 2006 IPCC guidelines, development of national emission factors, uncertainty assessment, QA/QC, and establishing data verification systems. We have a big lack of knowledge with regard to vulnerability assessments and also MRV of support. So just here to mention that based on all the challenges and the analysis that we have done, we have prepared the work plans for the various countries. This is just an example that we are happy to
I
share
think we
with.
now need to really wrap up. So sorry.
I'm done.
Sorry
I'm done. So I'm just here providing the link where you can find more details about the assessment report. And yeah, thank you for the time.
Well, thanks, Fatima Zahra, and sorry to push you. I know you have a lot of information, useful information that would be beneficial to participants, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. So let's quickly move to the next segment of the agenda, which is, presentation of tools that is available with our international partners. So let's start with the first one, which is on greenhouse gas abatement cost model, and that will be from Mr. Dennis Descain. He is the head of mitigation analysis and data management section of UNEP DTU partnership. So Dennis, the floor is all yours, please.
Yes, thanks a lot. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, please flow.
Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. I don't know why I lost. Where are the? Oh, sorry. Okay, can you? Okay, so I can share my screen now.
Yes.
Yes, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks a lot. Thanks to the organizer and welcome, of course, to all participants. So my name is Dennis and I work at UNEP DTU Partnership. So I'm a colleague of Fatima Zahra. So my presentation, I will try to stick to about 10 minutes, but it's to present you a tool, which is the GASMO tool, and give you an overview of what this tool can be used for in the context of the NDC, but also in the context of the Enhanced Transparency Framework. So as you will see, the GASMO tool is a greenhouse gas emission modeling tool. It's one tool among others, and it can be used, as you will see, for doing, for example, greenhouse gas emission projections in the context of the preparation or update of your NDC, but can be used also for tracking the implementation of specific mitigation action in the context of your NDC, in the context of your Enhanced Transparency Framework. So the GASMO tool, so GASMO is an acronym for Greenhouse Gas Abatement Cost Model, and the tool itself is an greenhouse gas emission tool based on Excel. So what is important to understand is that this tool is a pure bottom-up modeling tool. As you will see, all the calculation, all the projections which are done by the tool are from, I would say, a technology-based option, which are usually implemented on the ground. So it's, I repeat, a pure bottom-up modeling tool. The tool has been developed at UDP along 20 years and is available for free, actually. So anyone can go and download the tool and install and use it on his or her own computer. The tool also, this is important to mention, so all the calculations done by the tool are using default values from the IPCC, and the calculations are based on the methodologies developed under the CDM, the Clean Development Mechanism. So it means that all the calculations done by the GASMO tool are actually in line with the international requirement for estimating greenhouse gas emission. So now, what is the GASMO tool? What it will allow to a user? So the GASMO tool is a tool which analyzes the mitigation options of a region, a country, or a city, and evaluate the impacts of specific mitigation actions from the point of view of the greenhouse gas emission reduction. So basically, the tool will allow a user, first of all, to establish a business as usual scenario for the emissions of a region or a country. It will also allow the user to select specific mitigation option. And based on this, the tool will calculate the potential emission reduction, greenhouse gas emission reduction for each of these specific mitigation options. And by aggregating all the reductions together, the tool will allow the user to build a mitigation scenario for a specific point in time, so specifically 25, 30, and 2050. So this is if you used for projection. Now, as you will see, you can also use the tool by introducing, so selecting specific mitigation options and introducing the exposed, I would say, so the number of units for each of these specific mitigation options that your country might have implemented. And then in this case, the tool will calculate the real mitigation, the real emission reduction, which would have been achieved with these specific mitigation options. So it can really be used also for assessing ex post the emission reduction related to a specific mitigation option. Finally, you will see also that the tool allows or provides the user with some specific cost and financial information. So now how does it look like? Well, when you download the tool, so it's an Excel-based tool, you will have a long list of Excel sheets, and these sheets are divided into input sheet, output sheet, and also technological sheet. But I will not go into the details here in this presentation. So for using the tool, of course, the user will have to introduce some data in the tool. And what are the basic data that you need so that the tool will work? First of all, for the energy sector, you will need to introduce the last energy balance of your country. So the energy balance, the last one that you may have available for your country. For the non-energy sector, you will have to introduce the emissions, so the values of the emissions that you might have already calculated through the last inventory. Okay, so you'll need an inventory available, a last inventory available to use this tool. And finally, you will have to, the user, with the help of other experts in the country, will have to estimate some growth factor for the different sectors, subsector, and in each of them for the different types of activities. And I will show you how it looks like, okay? So basically, then quickly, the different steps are, of course, as in each model, so introducing some specific data related to your national context, like the currency, some specific data related to fuel prices, for example, that you use in your energy mix. And then this is the very first step, which is very important, is the introduction of your energy balance in the tool, which might be done in different type of units. Then, and this is what I was saying, the user will have to introduce for different period of time the growth factor related to a specific category of activities. Okay, and this growth factor can be found, of course, in a national development report, but can be assessed by experts related to these specific sector or subsector of activities. And what does Gasmo do with the data of the energy balance corresponding to your base year and with the growth factor? So Gasmo will make projections and build this way the business as usual scenario. Okay, then the next step will be, of course, to build the mitigation scenario. And to do so, the user will find in Gasmo a list of 119, as of today, mitigation options organized along the sector, subsector, and different activities as defined by IPCC. And for each mitigation options, which would be relevant, of course, in the national context, the user will have to introduce for a specific period of time, here in the example 2025, the number of units that might be implemented for this year. And by doing so, the Gasmo tool will calculate the emission reduction the greenhouse gas emission reduction, which could be achieved by the implementation of this specific mitigation option. Now, of course, this is to make projections, but as I have mentioned, you can also use the tool for ex-post estimation. So it means that if you have implemented now a mitigation, a technology-based or a policy or a mitigation option in your country, you can come to the GASMO tool, and with the same approach, you can introduce the real number, so the real number of units for a specific mitigation options, which have been already then introduced in your country. And the GASMO tool will calculate then the real mitigation, the real emission reductions, which will have been achieved through the implementation of this specific mitigation option. And you can do that for different years, so that the GASMO tool can be used as a tool for tracking the implementation of your specific mitigation option, for example, in the context of your NDC. Okay, so as I have mentioned, so this is the logic, the approach that the GASMO tool is using to build, of course, the mitigation scenario. You can build it, for example, for conditional scenario, of course, and conditional scenarios. Okay, finally, on top of the information related to the emission, greenhouse gas emission reduction, as I have mentioned, GASMO will provide also the user with a few information and results related to cost assessment. First of all, GASMO will provide the user with an assessment of the additional cost or the saving that the implementation of a specific mitigation options could provide to the country. So, for example, if you implement the replacement of incandescent bulb by LED bulb, so the tool will provide you with a cost estimation of how would that cost for the country, comparing the two mitigation, so the two options, so the mitigation one and the reference option. On top of this, and this is what you see now at your screen, the GASMO tool built also a MAC curve, so a marginal abatement cost curve, which compare the cost, so the efficiency, I would say, of each mitigation options in terms of cost compared to the amount of emission reduction that an options would allow to achieve. So actually, it's a very easy way and very quick way to compare the different mitigation options and potentially find what could be the win-win mitigation option. So meaning the mitigation option that would allow a reduction of the emission reduction, but also doing that with a saving in terms of cost. Okay. So to conclude the presentation, to try to stick to the 10 minutes, I would say that the GASMO tool is a simple tool compared, of course, to other modeling tool, and can be easily adaptable to a specific national context. The GASMO tool is also very transparent, because if you if you open the tool, you will see that nothing is hidden. So it means that all the calculations are can be found by a user. So the user can really see what is happening into the tool, and all the default values which are introduced into the tool are also available. It can be potentially modified by a user if there is a need to do so. So as we have seen, finally, so just to repeat, the GASMO tool can be used to make projections of emissions, greenhouse gas emission, building a business as usual scenario, a mitigation scenario. It can be used to analyze specific mitigation options, ex post or ex ante, and provide the user, of course, also with some cost estimation related to these specific mitigation option. So this is my last slide. So it's just to repeat that if you are interested or just curious about the tool, so you are, of course, quite welcome to download it at this link provided here. And if you have any question, you are also welcome, of course, to contact us through the emails provided here. So I think I will stop here. And I hope that I maintain more or less the time, and I'm available, of course, for any question through the chat or through emails. So thanks a lot to all.
Thank you, Dennis. So let's move to the next presentation of next tool, and that is from Dr. Henning Wüster. He's from Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, and Henning comes with rich and long-standing experience in climate change and sustainable development. And Henning will introduce the policy assessment guidelines developed by Initiative for Climate Action Transparency. Henning, please.
Thank you very much, Digma, and very good morning, colleagues, and greetings from sunny Bonn. If I can share my screen, I can start the presentation.
You can move also, sir.
Okay, I cannot share the screen right now. Hello?
You can share it now.
Now it's good, yes. So you should be seeing the screen now. And again, a very good morning or afternoon to you. My name is Henning Wüster. I'm director of the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, and very pleased to talk to you about the ICCAT assessment guides that are both very important for the ETF, or they can be very important to support implementing the ETF at the country level, but they can also be very important to advance climate policy and action. And it's this second purpose that's really our focus, why we of course prepared these guides on the basis of guidance from the ETF. Let me just start off very briefly to say a few words about ICCAT, the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency. We support countries on their transparency efforts and provide capacity building in line with the Paris Agreement. We are a multi-stakeholder partnership, including partners like UNEP-DTU partnership that just spoke, also the UNFCCC Secretariat, and very important, our 4 donors, which are Germany, Italy, and 2 foundations. We have above all 40 or more than 40 partner countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and the Pacific and the Caribbean. So what are these ICCAT assessment guides? This is a series of 10 methodologies that help countries to assess the impacts of climate policies and actions. So they help countries to use data, sound data, which is of course has to be the basis to understand the impact of policies on various aspects, which include the assessment of the GHG impact, but then also some cross-cutting aspects that can be assessed using some of the cross-cutting guides, which I will mention in a moment. And we also have 2 guides that provide process support. What is really important for us is to see these guides as a support to assist with evidence-based policymaking. So to help countries make their climate policies and actions as effective as possible in various ways, which I will explain just in a minute. We've complemented these guides with a number of tools. There are 3 tools, which I'll go into further detail in a moment, that support and facilitate the application of the guides. And there are a number of tools that are broader modeling and data management tools, like the GASMO modeling tool that you just heard about, but also a scenario analysis tool called Prospects Plus, and a data management tool, an integrated data management tool, which is called Synamec and is the data system developed and made available by Costa Rica in a collaboration that ICCAT has with Costa Rica. So here you see the overview of the 10 assessment guides. There's the introductory guide that basically explains the broad approach and how to use the guides. Then you have 5 assessment guides that focus on greenhouse gas impacts in various sectors: renewable energy, transport pricing, forestry, agriculture, buildings efficiency. Here at the center of the slide, you see the 3 guides that cover cross-cutting aspects. The first one allows the assessment of impacts of policies and actions on sustainable development. The second one, an assessment of the transformational change potential or impact of policies. And the third one allows an assessment of the impacts of actions at the subnational level or by non-state actors like private sector actors. And it allows an integration of these actions into national policy approaches, for instance, into the context of the NDCs. And then very importantly, we've got these 2 process guides, one focusing on stakeholder participation, which is an essential element of any policy process, and the second one then on technical review, which is also really essential to ensure the credibility and the precision of any assessment conducted using these other guides. So the 10 guides, they can be used in combination. You can look at the impacts of renewable energy policies using the Renewable Energy Policy Guide, complement that with an assessment of the sustainable development impacts, such as job creation potential, and then use the technical review guide to ensure that the overall assessment is sufficiently precise. The guides can be used before developing a policy as part of the support for developing a policy ex ante. They can be used during implementation to check the effectiveness of implementation, and they can be used ex post to evaluate. So this has been very much the case in the context of the NDC process. The guides were used during the NDC design. They were then used to track progress with NDC implementation, and after implementation to evaluate the effectiveness and get ready for a new round of NDC design based on the experience done. So this is what we refer to as evidence-based policymaking, because you use sound data in order to implement, to assess the impacts of these policies. So in order to support the application of some of the more sophisticated guides, we've developed tools. There's this climate action aggregation tool, which supports the implementation of the non-state and subnational action guide. We have 2 tools that support the implementation of the sustainable development methodology. One is the SCREEN tool, which was developed in the context of the COVID-19 economic crisis to assess the impacts on short-term economic recovery potential of climate action. The other tool is the TRACE tool, which assesses co-benefits in the transport sector related to health, congestion, or job creation. And these tools are available with support from ICAT. So if anybody's interested in applying them for their country, please let us know and we can arrange for the application. Just very quickly, and to stick with the time that I have been allocated, you can see here that we have been applying these methodologies in various countries in Asia, and I cannot go into the details here. Just to mention that ICAT is ready to offer support in terms of capacity building. We very much tailor our support to country needs, and the choice of methodologies is up to the country. That also then determines the focus of the work. So if you are interested, please look at our homepage or contact us if you want to know more and be in touch with us. So I look forward then to our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henning. So we are almost out of time, but I've been just informed that the organizers will be able to extend this session for another 15 minutes, which means we will have much lesser time for the remaining part. So let's move then on to the next presentation, which will be from Dr. Mirela Salvatore. She is from FAO, and she will present the biennial transparency roadmap tool. So Mirela, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jigme, and thank you so much for the organization. Hello, everybody. So I'm here to talk about the biennial transparency report guidance and roadmap tool, not only on behalf of the FAO, but also on behalf of the Partnership on Transparency for the Paris Agreement that has been a collaborating partner for the development of the tool. I will try to be very fast. So it's based on the experience on MRV and transparency related project that the FAO and PAPTA is having in the last 10 years. We are supporting country in planning the preparation for the first biennial transparency report. We hear from Jigme and from Bern that the time is very short. What we are trying to do is helping the country, guiding with questions and documentations to understand really how to fit in these 3 years the preparation for the biennial transparency report. So the idea is, first of all, to assure a smooth transition, because as we hear, it's not that everything is new. We are just moving towards the BTR in a very smooth way. We are trying to guide the design and the setup of the transparency system that is underpinning the BTR process, and also get an orientation of the time required for the biennial transparency report implementation. How does the tool works? We design the 6 main steps. For each step, there is a clear indication of the importance of the step itself. I'm sorry to go back to the slides. I'm asking support for doing. Thank you so much. So 6 main steps. Each step I provide with a brief description of the importance of each step in the overall process, and then we have guidance and recommendation how to improve the quality of the process over time and for each one of the steps. There will be a series of questions posed to check the national circumstances and the reporting capacity of the country, and based on this information, an indicative country-driven roadmap is designed, is time-based on assumption. So it's based on our assumption of what we are facing in supporting the country. This assumption can be modified to reflect the country situation. So actually, I'm really sorry, go back on one step. Go back of 2 steps. Okay, so we have the stock taking part that help the country to map out the current in-country reporting arrangements. It's a very light stock taking that also foreseen that the country perform a proper gap analysis in the country more in details, but at least you will have some initial guiding questions that help the country to focus on where they should pose the attention. We are guiding the country to understand the new requirement and planning for the BTR implementation. And then we have the roadmap generation properly as a calendar, as you can see, to try to understand really how to fit the different time frame and for being ready for the 2024. The tool is based on 6 steps. One is more to setting the scene, and there is a taking stock of the current arrangement. There is a planning phase, an implementation phase that you take into consideration the human resource and the country technical capacity, also giving the advice of the country to perform also more activities in parallel by enlarging the group of experts for doing the preparation. Also, and these first 4 steps help already for the preparation of the BTR roadmap. But we know very well that the process is also entailing the technical expert review, and in particular to figure it out how to improve over time the BTR. So there are also 2 other further sessions with some specific guidance on these specific 2 elements. So just going rapidly to what is next. So the tool is being already testing in a few countries where we already having projects like, FAO is implementing several CBAT projects in Asia in particular. So based on their time frame, we are already testing the tool. The tool will be launched in mid-October with a very dedicated event that jointly with the PAPTA we're going to do for showing really in the detail the tool, the main functionality. The tool will be available online with the documentation for the easy use by country experts, but we continue. FAO and PAPTA will be available on request for providing more insight on country implementation of the tool, and so we can provide any kind of technical support. So with this, we just would like just to thank you for the opportunity. Please, you can contact us and reach out to us on the PAPTA, and we'll be informed. We will try just follow us on our LinkedIn profiles to be informed of the new involvement of the BTR roadmap tool. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mirella, and thank you for wrapping up even before allocated time, another useful tool. Let us now quickly move to the last final presentation, and that will be on the templates developed by US Environmental Protection Agency, and it will be introduced by Mr. Leandro Buendia. He is an international climate change consultant with extensive knowledge and experience in the area of greenhouse gas inventories and national communication. So with that brief intro, let me pass the floor to Leandro. Leandro, please.
Thank you, Jigme. Can you see me? Thank you, Jigme, and good morning and good afternoon to all. Can I share the control slide? Can I have the control slide, please? No. Do you have the control slide?
Yeah, 1 second.
And just the control, let me check. Let me check it's working for me. Okay, so it's working. I'll go back, right? Okay, no. Am I doing the control or you are doing the control?
You are doing, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let me check. Where is it? Okay, thank you. So as noted, why is it moving? Maybe I'll use my share screen, huh?
Okay.
Is that okay? Okay, because I think we have a problem with it. Okay, thank you. Wait. Share screen. Okay.
Yeah, in meantime, Leandro, can I ask you to compress your presentation a bit?
It will be quick.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Wait. Can you see me? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So as noted by UNFCCC, under the EPF, we're moving toward a more regular system for reporting or review of inventories. And the EPA, building on the experience and working with countries, developed this national inventory system templates for developing greenhouse gas inventory. These templates show you step-by-step approach to design and build system for developing and advancing inventories in a way that reflect your national circumstances. The 7 templates that I'm talking about is about how to use a template, institutional arrangement, method and data documentation, quality control, and quality procedures, key category analysis, archiving system, and a national inventory improvement plan. How does it work with the inventory cycle? With the GHG inventory management in place, inventory compilers can manage the 7 stages of compilation cycle, and those activities are related to plan, collect, estimate, write, review, finalize, and archive report. So the inventory compilation stages contribute to the continuous improvement. I think this was emphasized by Bern in his presentation, that you should have an ongoing improvement of your inventory, and this will document the whole thing. We know that most countries have compiled at least 2 inventories, and so the focus of the national GHG inventory compilation now is for countries to institutionalize and continually improve their compilation process and in turn improve their inventory reports. So clearly, the 7 templates as shown in the graphics will help countries to develop a sustainable national GHG inventory system. And it will help establish and maintain a system that establishes continuous improvement in the inventory. As they complete the template, they will identify the strength and limitations of the current system. A general template is also provided on how to use it. So by filling out the templates, you and your inventory team can institutionalize the inventory compilation process over time and build more sustainable inventory system. The templates are not long, approximately 5 to 10 pages in length, and the completed templates can be compiled into a national inventory report. In addition to these 7 templates, the EPA has also developed supporting templates to guide the inventory. For instance, how to use a template, they also develop an inception memorandum template. For institutional arrangement, they develop additional templates, tools to guide in assigning responsibilities for the member of the inventory team. For the method and data documentation, this is very important in documenting the source of your activity data and emission factor. And in addition to that, they develop a confidentiality agreement and amendment template. They also develop a key category analysis tool that you can analyze your the main contributors of your inventory using the IPCC methodology, the level and trend assessment. So you can use this one. And finally, as also emphasized by Bern in his presentation, the importance of developing improvement in your inventory. This will help a lot in documenting and putting into details the improvement plan that you want to do in your inventory. So what are the benefits of these templates? By documenting the information about inventory, that will lead to improving transparency and credibility. By defining inventory tasks and development stages, that will lead to better planning of the full inventory cycle and also better use of the resources and staff capacity. The templates provide guidance and tools that you can customize to fit or accommodate your national circumstances and capacity. And by approaching inventory as a system with development stages, the template can help you prioritize improvement. Inventories evolve over time, and improvement in methods, data sources, change in staff, as mentioned also by Fatima, and also consultants. So picking up where the work had previously stopped and finished is difficult when you don't have institutional memory. but the templates can help you document your national inventory system so you have a clear starting point for future inventories. It can provide valuable and time-saving institutional knowledge. Using these templates, it will make easier for you to meet the increased reporting requirement under the ETF. As showed by Bern, starting in 2024, all countries must submit a biennial transparency report that includes an updated inventory using the 2006 IPCC guidelines. So this means you will need to produce a new updated inventory every 2 years. And lastly, in addition to these templates, the EPA recognized that agriculture and LULUCF sector, they're quite very challenging in terms of doing it. And preparing inventory for this involved a lot of things like methods, the overlapping data, and the challenge for consistent representation of land use and livestock. So we'd like to inform you that we have the EPA, they have developed a user-friendly tool for the Apollo sector. This tool is called the ALU software, which was developed by EPA in collaboration with Colorado State University. The software is a standalone tool to implement the IPCC 2006 guidelines only for the Apollo sector. Please take note, it's only for Apollo sector. It was developed based on the experience by EPA-led capacity building projects. It accommodates not only Tier 1, but also Tier 2 methods. It allows inventory compilers to integrate also GIS data into the system. And also I would like to inform you that this software can also do mitigation analysis similar to what the GATMO presented. It can develop a BAU scenario, mitigation scenarios, and then you can assess the mitigation potential of the categories under the Apollo sector. Currently, many different countries utilize this tool as their primary application to calculate Apollo sector, while other countries utilize this tool as a QC measure. We are also glad to announce that you can download the software free, including the user manual. And I'd like to thank you for your attention. I should take a closer look at the templates and embark on developing your own inventory management system. We will welcome you to contact us with questions or feedback at the email that you can see on the slides. So again, you can download all the templates and supporting templates also at the link that I am provided. So thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to the Q&A forum. Thank you. I hope I am on time.
Yes, very much. Thank you very much for that, Leandro.
Okay.
We are really behind the schedule, but still, now I would like to take opportunity of our presence here and take up one or two questions. So you can either ask for the floor or put it in chat box, and then I'm happy to take one or two questions. If not, we can wrap this up. So do let us know if you have any burning questions.
Jigme, would you like me to respond to the, there's a question about how does US EPA template different from the IPCC software?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so actually the US EPA templates, they are not a tool to estimate greenhouse gas inventory. It is a tool to document in details, so it will enhance your transparency in details, how you do your institutional arrangement, who are responsible, how you do the documentation of your activity data and emission factor, how you perform the QA/QC, how you archive your data, how you do the reporting. So everything will be put in details with the documentation using the templates. But it will not allow you to estimate your greenhouse gas inventory. That will be the task of the ALU tool for the Apollo sector or the IPCC software for all other sectors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. If you do have questions, we don't need to address all the questions here right away. However, if you do have additional questions, please either reach out to our event organizers, and they can in turn reach out to us, and we will find ways to respond to your questions through email. I do hope that the session was useful. Personally, to me, it was very interesting and insightful session. We have heard, through this presentation, it goes on to show that there are lots of opportunities that exist in some corner. All we need to do is raise our neck and look around, and we should be able to find the support that we need. It's interesting to hear that, you know, when you look at the tools that have been presented, it seems to cover a whole gamma of the tools that we would need for preparing a high quality biennial transparency reports in coming years. For example, there was a presentation of a tool which can help us undertake stock of where things stand now, where the gaps exist, and what kind of improvement that needs to be put in place in order to fulfill or meet at least the basic minimum requirements going forward, and then have a plan which will allow you to incrementally increase your capacity, both in terms of technical know-how as well as information and data. There were also the presentation of the tools also covered on tools that can help you undertake robust scientific assessment that will allow you to make evidence-based decision. And that, I think, it's very important going forward. And finally, we also had a presentation of tools that can help us document and maintain institutional knowledge and memory. I think that is very important as well. Looking at the past precedents where things were undertaken on a project by project basis, and at the end of the each project round, in number of cases, there is a constant washout of capacity knowledge that was built, and you know, when you start the next round around, you have to do it all over again. I would also note that, you know, these are not just a sample of tools that are available. There are lots more, and as I said, all you need to do is reach out to partners, dialogue with them, and you should be able to, in most often cases, you should be able to get the kind of support that you are looking for. So with that, let me close this session, and I wish everyone a healthy and a safe stay. So thank you very much. And thanks to all the panelists for a very good, informative presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jigme. Thank you to all the panelists also. And yes, the questions that you have posed, and some of them which were not being able to be answered during the session, we will collate them, and the panelists can answer them separately, and we can send them by email. Of course, the presentations and the video will also be shared. You can see there's a YouTube link also where you can find the video, and the presentations will be available to you via the Whova app. I would just now like to thank all the participants also for your valuable time, and please do fill up the feedback form. You will find that once the Zoom app is closed, or my colleague will also send the link in the chat box. I would just like to now ask all the panelists to please, if you can put your videos on, we just like to take one last photograph with everybody. And my colleagues will just take a photograph of all of us. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Just smile at 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you so much. And just to remind everybody, we do have another session at 1 o'clock India time, and that is 2:30 Bangkok time. And this time it's basically on the options and benefits of the institutional arrangements for developing a robust transparency framework within the countries. And we will have country examples coming in of how they have developed their institutional arrangements. So that's also going to be a very insightful session. So request everybody to do, if you can, please join us for that as well. Thank you, and apologize for going over time, but it was a session that was useful to many, and we hope you enjoyed your time here today. Thank you so much. Okay, have a good day, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.